Today on Doodle Draw Art, I'm going to show you how to paint this Nativity silhouette. This is the sketch that I've done to start with, and you can see I'm using some thicker paper, and it's a Bristol, so it won't absorb water as easily as regular paper. So I'm just going to place one sheet of it in my workspace and get started. So what I'm going to do is use a pencil to sketch out the outline of all of the images that are going to be in my final piece of art. So here I'm just sketching out my stable. I'm going to add some dimension to the roof. And remember, this is just going to be a silhouette in the end, so we're not going to be adding too many details. I'm just going to thicken this up a little bit and then make the side walls. Great. Now we'll place the figures inside, starting with Joseph, and he's kneeling down, so he's looking downward. And this is his body, and his knees, and then the bottom of his legs. And over here we'll have Mary. She's also looking down. Her body, her knees, and the bottom of her legs. And Mary is holding the baby, so her arm is outstretched, and there's his head. And now Joseph's holding a cane. There's his arm and his hand. So now we can add the outline feature details. So Joseph's wearing a head wrap, and it's just going to come down his back like this, and then his cloak will trail off behind. And I'll show where his nose is. First denting in by his eyes, and then his nose, and then under his chin. And that's really all we need for the details on his face. And then some bumps here to show his hand holding the cane. And then around his arm and down around his body and his knees. And then an outline for the cane. I made the cane extend just below Joseph's knee so that we can see it. In silhouette, it would not show that it extended unless we made it go past the knee. Now I'm doing the same for Mary, just showing her facial features. And then baby's head and Mary's arm. Again, it's just an outline. So her scarf ends there, and then her cloak is trailing behind her. Nice. So now I'm going to erase all of the faint pencil marks that are left behind inside the silhouette. I just don't want them to show up at all in my final painting. And then I'm just going to touch up any of my edges. I'm not going to be using marker for final lines, and like I do in many of my projects, so I do want my pencil lines to be clearly visible. Now this is the indication of the star, where it will be glowing. This is not a necessary step. You can use it as a guideline, and I'm actually going to paint right over that section, so I'll be erasing that in a moment. So what I'm going to do first is just erase my star sketch lines, because I'm going to use crayon and it's going to be the final bright yellow color, and I don't want a pencil line showing underneath this yellow. I want the bright yellow to contrast against the night sky. And now I am just going to erase those sketch marks that I just made. I'm deciding not to color in further at that area of the star. But you could use a gentle yellow, or you could use even an orange color around the star in that area that I've just erased. But I've decided I just want the star to set against the night sky. And I'm just going to touch this up with a bit heavier. I'm really pressing quite firmly here. I want this to not let any paint through. This wax is going to cause the paint to be repelled in that area. So now I'm ready to do my background, and I'm going to paint this with lots of dark colors, and the first thing I need to do is prepare my paints. So I'm going to prepare yellow. I'm just going to wet all of the little circles of paint that I'm planning to use for this project, and I'm using yellow and lots of blues and dark colors. So I'm going to wet these down, just a bit of water on all of them to get them soaking and let the color come through. Alright, so a wash of yellow over the star, and then I'm going to start applying blues and grays and black until it entirely covers my white space. And I don't want it to be super dark, so I'm keeping it well mixed with water so that when I blend it, I will be able to see my pencil sketch lines through the paint color. I'm going to be using those to guide my silhouette painting. So I'm just smearing this everywhere, blending it as I go. Sometimes I blend it with water, sometimes I blend it with a little more paint. If it looks dark, just make sure you bring some water in your next step. I avoided the star area at first, but I am going to wash over this. My entire paint is still wet. None of this is dry. But you'll see I'm just going to quickly brush across the star, and it's going to pop right out against the blue of the background. And when the project is fully dry, I can just go back over and dust off the paint that's on top of the star. I'm just going to darken up the edges. A little more darkness. It is night. I want the blue to be obvious in the middle and lighter still in the middle where the stable is, but darker around the edges. Just a little finger painting to bring some swoopy cloud-like. Alright, so now that my paper has dried completely, I'm going to go back with a fine line black, and I'm going to make sure my black is nice and opaque, really, really well soaked with water and a little bit thick so that it spreads well. And now I'm just going to find the lines. You maybe can't see them, but I can still see them through my background. I'm just going to trace the outline with my very fine black brush. And once all the outlining is done, I'm using a larger brush now to fill in, and it's very dark black paint. It's nice and thick. It might look a bit thin right now just from this view, but that's because the lighting and the angle of the camera is causing it to be a little bit shiny in that area, but as it dries you'll see that it's a nice thick black. This here's just watercolor paints. Nothing fancy here. You can find them in the children's art section of any department store or art store. Now I'll just do the same thing with the remainder of the stable and the characters. You notice I'm working from left to right, so I did the sections of the painting that were higher, and now I'm doing the lower sections, but I've left the right side of the stable till the end because I want a place to be able to sit my hand while I'm painting, and since I'm right-handed, I might need to angle my hand over towards the right, and by leaving that unpainted I don't have to worry about smudging my work. Alright, so we're just finishing up here the last of the fill-in details, and that's it. It's our Nativity silhouette painting project. I'm just going to put my initials. Every good artist should always initial their work. Every artist, even if you don't think you're good. So I'll put my initials down here, and I'm going to put 13 for the year. Alright, so we'll just leave it to dry, and we're good to go. I hope you've enjoyed watching me do this piece of art today, and I hope that you're inspired to do one for yourself. If you're on Instagram, you can find me there, and if you happen to recreate this art project, I would love it if you would post it up on Instagram and tag me in the picture so I can see it too. And don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe here on YouTube.